Robert hadn't planned on taking the trail that morning. His daughter, Emma, had begged him to go for a walk before her soccer practice, and he could never say no to those big brown eyes. They'd been on their own for 3 years now since Sarah passed, and every moment with Emma felt precious. The forest was quiet that Saturday morning with sunlight filtering through the oak trees. Emma skipped ahead collecting pine cones, while Robert followed behind watching her pink hoodie bob between the shadows. That's when they heard a sound, so faint he almost missed it, a muffled cry coming from somewhere off the path. "Emma, stop!" Robert called out, his hand raised. His daughter froze mid-step, her ponytail swinging as she turned back. "What is it, Dad? Listen." They both stood perfectly still there. It was again fainter this time, like someone calling from underwater. Robert's heart began to pound as he pushed through the underbrush, following the desperate sounds. Emma stayed close behind, gripping the back of his shirt. The cries grew louder, and then Robert saw it. Fresh dirt piled near a massive tree and a small opening in the ground. His stomach dropped. "Someone's down there," he whispered. He dropped to his knees and started digging with his bare hands, throwing soil aside in frantic handfuls. "Emma, get back to the trail and call 911. But Dad now." Emma, his daughter, ran. Robert dug faster, his fingers scraping against roots and rocks. The opening grew wider and he could see something moving below, a hand, pale and trembling, reaching up through the darkness. "Hold on, I've got you." He pulled away more earth, creating a gap large enough to see inside. A woman lay in the shallow grave dirt, covering her blonde hair and business suit. Her face was streaked with mud and tears, her eyes wild with terror. She looked to be in her early 50s, maybe a bit older. "Please," she gasped, her voice raw. "Please help me." Robert reached down and grabbed her arms on 3. He said 1, 2, 3. He pulled with everything he had, and she scrambled upward, clawing at the sides of the hole. With one final heave, she tumbled out onto the forest floor, gasping and sobbing. Robert sat back, breathing hard. "You're safe now," he said gently. "You're safe." The woman curled into herself, shaking violently. Her navy blazer was torn and her white blouse was stained with blood and dirt. "Who did this to you?" She didn't answer at first, just stared at him with glassy eyes, like she couldn't quite believe she was alive. Then she whispered something so quietly Robert had to lean in. "My husband." The words hit him like a punch. "Your husband did this." She nodded, tears streaming down her face. "I'm worth more dead than alive," she said bitterly, 20 million to be exact. Robert didn't know what to say. He'd lived paycheck to paycheck his whole life, working double shifts at the hardware store to keep food on the table. 20 million was a number he couldn't even comprehend. "What's your name?" he asked softly. "Victoria." She whispered. "Victoria Ashford." The name meant nothing to him, but he could see the weight it carried in her eyes. "Well, Victoria, I'm Robert, and help is on the way. You're going to be okay." She looked at him with something like wonder. "Why did you stop?" "Most people would have kept walking." Robert shrugged. "My daughter, and I heard you. We couldn't just leave you at that moment." Emma came crashing back through the trees. "They're coming, Dad." She stopped short when she saw Victoria, her eyes going wide. Robert held out his hand, and Emma came to stand beside him. "This is Emma," he said. "She's the real hero. She's the one who heard you first." Victoria looked at the young girl in the pink hoodie, and something in her expression cracked. She began to cry harder, this time not from fear, but something deeper. "Thank you," she whispered to Emma. "Thank you so much." The paramedics arrived within minutes, followed by police. They wrapped Victoria in blankets and loaded her onto a stretcher as they carried her away. She reached out and grabbed Robert's hand. "Don't leave," she said. "Please?" Robert looked at the officers and they nodded. He climbed into the ambulance with her, while Emma rode up front at the hospital. Robert sat in the waiting room with Emma curled up asleep against his shoulder. He should have been at work, but his boss would understand. He hoped. Hours passed before a detective came to speak with him. The woman's name really was Victoria Ashford. The detective said she owned a pharmaceutical company worth hundreds of millions. Her husband had taken out a massive life insurance policy on her 6 months ago. They'd arrested him an hour ago trying to flee the country. Robert shook his head in disbelief. "And she's going to be okay physically?" "Yes," the detective said. But this kind of betrayal that takes time to heal. 3 days later, Robert received a call from an unknown number. "Hello, Robert." It was Victoria's voice, stronger. "Now, I wanted to thank you properly." "You already did that at the hospital." "No," she said, "I didn't. I'd like you and Emma to come to my home, please." Robert hesitated. He didn't belong in the world of mansions and millionaires. But something in her voice made him say, "Yes." The estate was like something out of a movie, rolling lawns and fountains and a house that seemed to go on forever. Emma pressed her face against the truck window. "Wow," she breathed. Victoria met them at the door. She looked different now, cleaned up with her blonde hair pulled back, but her eyes held the same haunted look. "Come in, please." She led them to a sunroom filled with plants and natural light. They sat on cream-colored couches that Robert was afraid to touch. "I've been thinking," she began, "about what you did. You saved my life without even knowing who I was. You didn't want anything in return, you just helped because it was right." Robert shifted uncomfortably. Anyone would have done the same, but they wouldn't have, she said firmly. "Most people would have called the police and kept walking. You got your hands dirty, you pulled me out yourself." She paused, looking at Emma, "And you both stayed with." "That means everything." Victoria stood and walked to the window. "I have no children," she said, quietly. "No real family left. My husband was all I had, and he tried to bury me alive." Her voice broke on the last words. Robert wanted to comfort her, but didn't know how. "I've spent my whole life building a company making money." She continued, "But I've never had what you have." She turned to look at him, "A child who looks at you like you hung the moon, a life filled with real love." Robert felt his throat tighten. "It hasn't been easy," he admitted, "since my wife died. It's just been me and Emma. Some days I don't know if I'm doing it right." "You are," Victoria said. "I can see it in how she trusts you, how she feels safe. That's everything." They talked for hours. Victoria told them about her childhood, about building her company from nothing. Robert shared stories about Sarah and the struggles of single parenthood. Emma showed Victoria her collection of soccer trophies on her phone. As the sun began to set, Victoria walked them to the door. "Before you go," she said, "I want to give you something." She handed Robert an envelope. He opened it, and his heart stopped. It was a check with more zeros than he'd ever seen. "I can't accept this, please." She said, "You gave me my life back. Let me give you both a future. You could pay off your house, send Emma to any college she wants, maybe even take a vacation." Robert looked down at his daughter, then back at Victoria. The money would change everything, but that wasn't why he'd helped her. "I didn't pull you out of that grave for money," he said gently. "I know." Victoria's eyes filled with tears. "That's exactly why I want you to have it." Robert stood there, torn. Finally, Emma tugged on his sleeve. "Dad," she said, "maybe we could help Miss Victoria too." "What do you mean, sweetie? She looks sad." Emma said simply, "Maybe she needs a friend out of the mouths of babes." Victoria laughed through her tears and knelt down to Emma's level. "You're very wise for someone so young." Emma smiled. "My mom used to say that. Friends are the family we choose." Victoria looked up at Robert. "Your wife sounds like she was wonderful." "She was," Robert said, "and she would have liked you in." That moment, something shifted. This wasn't about money or obligation. It was about two broken people finding unexpected connection. Over the following months, Victoria became part of their lives. She came to Emma's soccer games, cheering louder than anyone. She had dinner at their modest house, eating spaghetti at their scratched kitchen table, and slowly the haunted look in her eyes began to fade. Robert eventually accepted her help, but not all of it, just enough to secure Emma's education and fix the roof. The rest he asked her to donate to a women's shelter. She did, and then volunteered there every week. One evening, as they sat on Robert's back porch, watching Emma chase fireflies, Victoria spoke. "You know what you really gave me that day?" Robert waited. "Hope." She said, "Hope that there's still goodness in the world, that not everyone wants something from me, that I can trust again." Robert reached over and squeezed her hand. "You gave us something too." "What's that?" "You showed Emma that helping people matters. That being kind is never wasted, even when things look darkest. There's always light." Victoria smiled. "Your wife really did raise a wise daughter." "We both did," Robert said, "and she'd be proud of the woman Emma's becoming." As the fireflies danced, and Emma's laughter filled the air, Robert realized something. He'd gone into those woods that morning with nothing but love for his daughter, and he'd come out with something he never expected, a reminder that the most valuable things in life can't be buried or bought. They can only be given freely from one broken heart to another, until something beautiful grows. If this story touched your heart, please take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who needs a reminder about kindness, subscribe to hear more stories that matter, and leave a comment below, telling us about a time someone showed you unexpected kindness, because those moments, those are the ones that change everything.